is our session today, and I think I'll stop the presentation for now. Will be a discussion with our speakers. We have prepared some questions, and we'd like to hear the thoughts from our speakers today. So this will be more like an informal discussion, a fire chat discussion. So no presentation, but the recording will be made available following the webinar. So I'll start my first question for Connor. So I'd like to give him the floor. Connor can tell us a little bit more on the work he's leading at Dublin Airport, but also co-leading under the ACI World Facilitation and Services Standing Committee in the development of an ACI guidebook that will focus specifically on biometrics. So Connor, would you be able to kindly guide us through this upcoming work and how it all started in the Facilitation and Services Committee?
Yeah, thanks, JS. It's a pleasure to be here. So thanks for the invite. Yeah, so from a DA perspective, we obviously operate Dublin Airport as our main airport in the group, also Cork Airport in Ireland, as well as ARI, which is a travel retail brand operating in airports across the world, and DA International, which has management contracts, investments, and advisory work in airports across the world. So we kind of have a broad perspective on biometrics and where we've seen it in the group. So I've had some involvement in my previous role as airport development manager in Dublin Airport, where we were looking at terminal expansions, terminal design, and a lot of capital projects, to my current role where we're looking at operational requirements in different airports in the group. So yeah, from DA's perspective, we have had a mixed review of biometrics. So there's obviously some great things that biometrics can do in the passenger journey, but then there's also a lot of challenges, which some of the other guys will, of course, be familiar with. And with ACI, JS, you're well aware, but for everyone on the call, just to understand, we're trying to develop a biometrics guidebook for airports, and that will be published next year. So we've currently done a lot of background work and experience reviewing, surveying passengers using available data that's out there, surveying airport operators themselves. And the idea is to understand the airport readiness and the business case for biometrics mainly, and then how do you actually implement it. So from an airport's perspective, instead of having the airline's perspective, the vendor's perspective, the government agency's perspective, whether that's an immigration or customs authority, security screening authority in your jurisdiction, or a transnational government entity like in the EU, there's a view on biometrics from a lot of different players in the space, and the airports to have their own view is kind of what we're developing. So we're really looking to kind of provide a guidebook that will be helpful to help airports navigate it. And there may be a difference if you're an airport at the scale of Dublin Airport with 35 million passengers plus, or even bigger than that, mega hubs in the world, versus a regional airport. So we're finding that there's probably different approaches that different airport sizes will need to make, and there's also obviously different challenges in different jurisdictions that we're finding. So it really is something that needs to be navigated by airports, and they need to take probably a stronger view on biometrics. But there's obviously a lot of benefits and a lot of synergies that need to be considered with the other stakeholders in the system. So it's never just one party. There's a multitude of stakeholders. So that's at a high level, JS, what this document is about and what the airports in the ACI Facilitation Committee are working towards.
Well, thank you very much, Connor, for providing these details, and we really look forward. I look forward for sure in seeing the guidebook produced next year, and to see how we can build more awareness of biometrics development and implementations at airports. Excellent. Thank you so much for this. My second question now would be first for Derwin and then for Sammy. If you can maybe just briefly tell us a little bit about your work, but also based on your experience, Derwin, could you tell us further what problems is biometrics solving for airports more specifically?
Sure. Thanks, JS. In my experience with Air Canada for over 25 years and now with the Airport Authority, we're always looking for opportunities to be more efficient. And I would liken it back to when I was a kid on the radio and there would be the traffic report. And the traffic report was from some individual in a helicopter flying over the city to understand where are the pain points in traffic and getting on your daily commute. What we see in airports is now I find myself in the helicopter looking, and what I see right now are pain points for queuing and where are the bottlenecks through the airport experience. In the early 2000s, a lot of that bottleneck was in the front of the house, you might call it. With check-in lineups taking hours and hours. And in the last 20 years, as an airport community, almost every airport has done the same thing. We've invested in kiosks, we've invested in self-tagging, and now we're investing in self-serve bag drops. So that traffic problem has sort of been solved. But where we now see traffic problems as an industry are with those transactional interactions that are happening at places like security, at the border, and boarding airplanes. And so what I see is the biggest opportunity that biometrics can help alleviate is those bottlenecks at the airports.
Thank you. Thank you, Derwin, for this answer. Let's turn it to Sami. So how about you? Based on your experience at Dubai airports, could you tell us further what problems you are solving with biometrics?
Oh, absolutely. I think in general, Dubai airports currently forecasted to welcome 90 million passengers in 2025. And we're supposed to be in this airport until 2023 when we move to the Al Maktoum International Airport that's coming up soon. And the forecast is taking us to 110. So we're really have to sweat the assets in terms of capacity and bottlenecks, as my colleague said. So we are investing heavily in the seamless journey, what we call, with our strategic partners. And we've established a community throughout the airport service partners under the title 1DXP, where we investigate and work on initiative that's going to benefit everyone, from the airline to the government authorities to the retailers. Whoever works within the environment of the airport is involved in this community. And we've seen, as mentioned as well, we've seen a very high demand for the seamless journey, the baggage drop. We've just installed 24 in Terminal 3, and we're working on the Smart Gate enhancement as well with our immigration partners. So the capacity and the throughput is definitely number one issue that we're trying to tackle through the biometric journey. Efficiency in terms of staffing as well, after the COVID as well, there's a lot of layoff during COVID, and the seamless journey helped in the recovery of Dubai airports after COVID with the staffing model that was initially at the initial stage after the COVID recovery. The long queues as well, that's a big issue in terms of satisfaction for our passengers. So that's also a very important for us. Our CEO is very strong on the passenger experience, and this is the biometric journey aligns with this very well. It does provide a good satisfaction level for our passengers. A very important part as well that we've seen the biometric services at our airports help during disruptions. Whether it's airspace closure, which we had quite few ones last year, whether it's weather, the rain, heavy rains, or fog or something. So we relied heavily on biometric kiosk and biometric gates and stuff at the as well the lounges. So that's been very instrumental in the resilience of our airport.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Sammy, for enlightening us regarding the deployments of those solutions. Hasse, please wait a little bit. I'll be back to you, but first I wanted to ask some follow-up questions to, again, Derwin and Sammy. We are often asked regarding the business case development for biometrics. And so what's in it for airports? How can we get your CFO's attention or the CFO's attention in order to proceed with implementing a biometric solution in an airport? So Derwin, maybe if you would like to start first, and then Sammy again.
Sure. You know, as an airport, all of us, the way that we can grow, and we all want to grow in order to have more revenue coming into our pocket. And the way to grow at an airport is to have more airlines flying in, so increased capacity, as Sammy said, and also to have more passengers with available time to spend money in the airport. So we can see, and we've proven with biometrics over the years, that airlines are more efficient. You know, they can board large aircraft with a couple of resources instead of a handful of resources. And if the airlines can go through processes to be more efficient and make more money and buy more airplanes and add more frequency, that's going to turn into profits for the airport community as well. For passengers, having more time in the airport to shop, to be at duty free, to be leisure, rather than standing in a queue is also beneficial for the airport. You know, expansion and growth is the way to get more revenue and more people traveling through the airport. And the way to do that is either by continuing with manual processes and building larger buildings, or increasing throughput with the existing facilities we have and using technology. So I think the benefit for any CFO or CEO is that more throughput and more efficiency for passengers and airlines directly equates to more revenue and more profit for the airports as well.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Sammy, anything to add over and above Derwin's answer regarding the business case development? How is that being done at your facility and under the One DXB?
I think Derwin was spot on in identifying all of those benefits. For us as well at Dubai Airport, you know, we are the regional hub for the world's largest airline, which is Emirates Airline. Emirates Airline operates on 60% currently, I think, the number of transfer passengers. So definitely we want to retain those passengers who fly through Dubai. We want to increase the number of passengers that choose Emirates to fly through Dubai as well. And, you know, by cutting the lines, by cutting the waiting time, by providing the satisfaction, you know, there are some intangible benefits for biometric. I want to highlight this to everyone. There are the absolutely, the revenue is very important for CFOs, but for COOs is the satisfaction of the passengers. And that's where we come in as a terminal service delivery in pushing those initiatives through and for adaptation. So that will be the our business case to any investment in any initiative in this domain.
In this domain, okay, excellent. Thank you, Sammy, for answering that one. I promised Hasse you'd have some airtime as well. So Hasse and Connor, let's start with you, Hasse. Sometimes biometric solution implementation might not go as per the plan. There might be some hurdles, there might be some challenges. And could you elaborate a little bit further on what you have experienced in terms of biometric implementation, especially on the airline perspective, on a carrier perspective, when you have multiple airports, multiple hubs to connect with biometrics? So The floor is yours, Hasse.
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien. Obviously, might have a different perspective on biometrics and what we can do. However, I would say, just listening to Connor and Sami and Devin, that I agree that at airports it will increase capacity. It will probably provide a smoother customer experience, and I believe in the business case at the airport. Whereas airlines probably will be more focusing on what's happening outside the airport environment, because we've got automation in place. We have self-service backup, self-service kiosk, self-service boarding gates, and you may wonder, how much will, what's the difference of having just present your boarding card or your face? Yeah, it was still an automated gate will open. Yeah, but I think even though that we see value in stuff taking place with biometrics, I think there is a hesitation, for the airlines to move into this space with, let's say, with the regulatory issues that currently you never really know what's happening tomorrow. And the last experience we had, let's say, in Europe was the EDPB opinion that came out May 2024 and sort of stopped everything that was going on in Europe at the time. It did raise a good question, I think, how to treat data, biometric data, and personal data as well in digital identity solutions at airports. And it certainly did increase focus on making solutions that are decentralized rather than centralized. I think many solutions at airports, it's just me claiming that, but what I've seen in the past is airports introducing biometric solutions and offering to airlines, but in many cases it's been depending on a centralized system, and it required an enrollment with kiosks and so on. So I think as long as we're still here with that kind of solutions, we will see a hesitation from the airlines. Also, it's difficult for the airlines to let's say, to engage with an airport at one station, have one customer experience, and then support another customer experience at another station with a network with, let's say, for us, and IAG, we've got 262 stations, I think, within our network, and it will be impossible to support one solution at one station. I'm just saying that it will. So I think we won't have more progress until we have a sort of an industry solution in place. And by that, I think we are not. I don't think we'll have a global solution. I don't think we'll have standards in time, but I do think with the digital identity wallets coming out now, with Google, with Apple, now with the EU working on their own digital identity wallet, I think it is creating a platform by which both airports, airlines, and customers can sort of commit themselves. So I think we are looking into a quite a new era in this field.
Well, we'll get into the details of the wallets a bit later as well, but yes, okay. Well, thank you for giving us your thoughts on these challenges. Connor, what about you? What's, based on your experience at several locations, more recently at Dublin, how would you elaborate further on those challenges in terms of biometric implementations?
Yeah, I think some good points from all the other attendees here. So from Derwin, I completely agree that if this is done right, it can definitely smooth facilitation, and the cost benefit analysis could be done right there in terms of it's more efficient, it's increasing your capacity, it's allowing you to build less, all of those good things. And I agree with Hasse as well that it's an airline. It's a point that the airlines really need to drive in a lot of ways. They're the ones that actually control. We agree from an airport perspective that the airlines do have a better touch point with the passenger, right? So a lot of passengers wouldn't have our app, Dublin Airport app. We're obviously trying to increase that, but the airline as the point of contact is one of the main things. From an implementation perspective, we're seeing a couple of different kind of things in our different airports that and we're trying to capture some of this in the guidebook as well at an ACI level with different examples. But just from Dublin's experience, we have two very different airlines kind of in Dublin. So we don't have one dominant airline. We have two major hub carriers in Ryanair and Aer Lingus, quite different products from a passenger perspective. So rolling out something that would suit them both at the airport is a challenge, and that's just the nature of different types of travel segments, different types of flight sectors, bags ratios, boarding processes, additionals such as lounges, etc. Completely different between the two airlines. So that's the airline difference at your airport is going to be one thing to consider for airports when they're implementing biometrics. The other thing that we're seeing is there's a difference as well in terms of the need for it and the requirement at different airports. So, for example, we're doing VIP terminals in the US. We've actually started several tenders to take control of some of these facilities in the US, and we have a VIP airport in Saudi Arabia, which is Red Sea International Airport, and that's being managed by DAA. So we see it on the luxury sector. You actually may have less requirement to use biometrics, right? Passengers may want the human touch, so that kind of hotel-like service rather than actually standing in front of a biometric capture camera or putting on their biometrics in advance via mobile phone or their first point of capture. So we're seeing some differences, between airport size, airline type that you have at your airport, and then passenger segmentation. So picking the best and the most appropriate implementation plan that will all factor into it. Another thing that we see in Dublin is we're kind of between several jurisdictions in some way. So we have a common travel area with the UK. So from a border perspective, the Irish immigration authorities are very aligned with the UK, let's say. We're also in the EU, so a lot of our data protection and overall regulatory policy is coming from an EU level. And then we're the only capital city in Europe to have US pre-clearance facility. So again, we have an element that there's multiple jurisdictions operating in our airport. So again, these are elements that we're trying to, in the ACI guidebook, that we're going to be actually trying to help provide airports kind of a detailed framework of, how do they negotiate with these various parties. So it's all very interesting, and these are just some of the challenges, let's say, JS, that we have to worry about in this space.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, yes, many. If it was too easy, it would be done everywhere. So again, yes, many challenges, many hurdles. Derwin, would you have anything to add to this questions about challenges and hurdles in implementations?
Yeah.
Oh, did we lose? I think we lost Derwin for.
Done it before,
oh,
and
yeah,
sorry. I think that it's. I think the only thing I would add is that it's scary doing something new. I remember back in the 2000s, it was very scary for airports to adopt self-tagging, and it was one airport, and then it was 5, and then it was 10, and then it was 200. And it's you're doing a bit of a leap of faith. But I do believe that this technology is here, and it is coming. Haas made a very good point about that. It's really embracing what the new technology is going to be and being at the front of the line rather than at the back of the line. Again, we saw this with mag stripes and going to 2D barcodes, for example. Some airports and airlines, were front runners and some were stragglers. And I believe that in the biometrics, digital identities are the thing of the future. Paper is the thing of the past. We all know that in our normal lives. And that is also going to be the case with identification. It already is with boarding passes. So I think it's really just, understanding what is coming and being the best prepared and enabling that for airlines and passengers.
And thank you for sharing your thoughts regarding those challenges. While you have the floor, I'll continue with you, Derwin, as well. We have seen in the past in biometrics implementation, they vary from one to another, and so what do airports really control? And that's the topic of our webinar today. So if I can say it this way, what do airports control? Are the airports the power players or rather the supporting casts in the implementations? So what has been your experience there?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I think as an airport, again, I think what we are is an enabler for passengers and for airlines to be successful. So if an airline has an idea about how they want to have their business processes done, as an airport, we always want to listen to how the airlines want to be more effective and more efficient and enable them to go down that path. The same thing with passengers. And I think it was said earlier that passengers don't want to be in lineups. They want to have a nice, seamless experience where they're relaxed and calm through the experience. What makes almost every person not calm is lineups and queuing and delays. So, if we can enable those processes, I think it's very important. And I think you made another very important point, JS, is that there are different solutions out there. And how do we sort of manufacture or support those different solutions? And in Vancouver in early 2026, we're going to have 3 different biometric solutions all happening at the airport at the same time. We have the Air Canada digital identification solution that's been going for a couple of years for domestic travel. We've recently launched foreign boarding, where Vancouver Airport is utilizing the TVS database, in the United States, because we're a pre-clearance airport. So we're also doing biometrics using that system. And early in the new year, we're also going to be offering a biometric solution for passengers or airlines who don't have their own. But what we can do is equipment is when we say common use, it can be agnostic, and we can use the equipment in different biometric situations. So I think that there's opportunities to support different models throughout the industry, and what we've been proving is you can support different biometric models at the same airport.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've seen different models out there. So, Connor, I'd like to hear your thought as well on this question about various implementations and level of controls. And we'll get back to the questions that participants are already putting in the Q&A. Government implications, and so Connor, what are your thoughts about airports being supporting casts or more the power players in those biometrics and digital identity implementations?
Yeah, I think I agree with Derwin. It's unfortunate for correspondence and argument on this webinar, but I agree completely with Derwin what he's saying. And yeah, we have a very similar situation in terms of having different biometric elements in place, whether it's government-led or airline-led. There's the challenge is not to actually introduce too many layers of biometrics in terms of alternative ways to kind of capture, if the airport, for example, we control, some products such as common lounges or fast track access. We have obviously good coordination with the retail operators that operate there. So what biometrics are going into those kind of products? That's one area that we need to kind of figure out. Is that something that should be tapping into the airline system? The requirements of data are very different for some of these. So you're actually seeing that, the passport data is obviously very sensitive, whereas, access to a lounge once someone's already been security cleared may not be. So trying to figure out the data protection issues with this is a challenge that our data protection team and DAA are really looking into, in terms of where does the data sit, how long is it kept, who's keeping it. All of this is sitting somewhere on our IT system framework, but who has access to it and how is it transmitted to different stakeholders in the process? So that's something that we're kind of working through as well. And then just from a cost perspective, I think one thing that, we have 129 gates in Dublin. So from that perspective, implementing all of this infrastructure in the physical environment that hasn't been designed for that is another element that we need to take a look at, which is, is the lighting correct in these situations? Do you have enough maneuverability around the actual physical column structure, ceiling heights, all of the actual planning issues that you might have with trying to implement biometric capture, and trying to move that point of the original point of identity verification away. Maybe it comes to a mobile device rather than a kiosk eventually. So that's a lot of things I've mentioned, but there's a lot to kind of work through. So
a lot to take advantage of, but a lot to to work through and to make this a reality. Absolutely. My next question now would be for Hasse. I'd like to know and hear your thoughts on the stakeholder engagement. So we mentioned collaboration in the past. We've mentioned the need for all the players to be working hand in hand. But how can airports prepare deployments and implementations ahead of time based on your experience for Copenhagen or with IATA or now with IAG? Have you seen some differences in those deployments that you've been involved in, and what would be like your lessons learned or your recommendations in terms of stakeholder engagement in this situation?
Well, it's rather crucial that we do this together. So I find stakeholder engagement is one of the first steps that you need to make. Partner up with airlines, airports, partner up and plan to do something together. Because one thing is what you can imagine, one thing is what you learn from what's going on other places in the world, but there is nothing like doing it. And I then also mean, not only on the technical side, but also, what kind of customer experience will you then have? Mm-hmm. And all the regulatory issues and all the issues regarding data protection and so on, everything that Connor just mentioned before, even down to the lighting issues. And, if you do a trial, if you plan a POC, if you partner up, then you will experience and learn, and then you can, always do it, for the purpose of scaling up. You can do workarounds, but I would encourage to sort of develop something together that will work in a larger scale. And obviously there is another, for on the standard setting side, it's really important that we have airport engagement, we have airlines engagement, we have government engagement, and I find that, for instance, at the IATA One ID, that working group and that work that goes on there. But it's not only there, it's also conferences, it's, just get engaged, I think at some point in the work, I think it's led by airlines, probably because the airline is the one holding the contract with the end user, the customer, and
the customer, the passenger. Mm-hmm.
It's difficult for airports, I think, to control what's going on within, outside the airport environment. And so, but stakeholder engagement, very important. Get engaged, meet up and plan trials together. That's the only way that you really identify what you need to solve. Yeah. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Hasse, for bringing those thoughts and sharing them with the group here. I'd like to turn it to Sammy. It's been quiet. I'm sorry, Sammy. I'll give you the mic now. So, several biometrics model already deployed in airports around the world. So we've seen different proof of concepts. We've seen different deployments. Can you elaborate further on what has been on Dubai specific, the type of passenger enrollments you've been focusing on? So remote from home, on-site airport kiosks, or both? And what step of the journey have been included in your deployments at DXB? Would it be more on arrivals, on departure? Any specific reasons why some steps were chosen first than others?
Sure. We have very I would say, after listening and viewing the when I travel, observing the international airports, we have very aggressive roadmap in terms of biometric. I don't know if you guys heard in the news, we just inaugurated the free flow tunnel at the immigration departure and arrival recently. And it is still in the POC stage, just as Hessa just mentioned. It's very good to engage with your service partners and the airlines as well. And we're working hand in hand with our specifically on those two projects with our immigration partners in Dubai, the government agency in charge of the immigration. We developed those two products where now you don't even need a smart gate. You just walk through. You and your family and with your friends or whoever traveling with you, you just walk through this tunnel and we'll capture your data and you're fine to travel. If not, we will ask you to step aside and just if we don't have the data or we didn't capture your data right. So we do have an aggressive roadmap, I think, for
roadmap.
this. Yeah, and it is luckily, again, it is supported, all of the efforts we do by the hub carrier, which is in this case Emirates Airline and Fly Dubai as well. And however, our implementation on the smart gates, for example, it's across all terminals. It serves all the airlines flying to Dubai, whether Emirates, local airline, or foreign airlines, whether low cost or legacy airlines, all of them, take advantage of the smart gates deployed at different terminals. Now, in terms of the passenger sign up, we rely on two sources. For the hub carrier, Emirates, they do have this on their app, support the sign up on their app, and all the data is transferred to the GDRFA through our gateway. So Dubai Airports act like a gateway between any interested airline and the government agencies, where we feed the data both ways within the restriction, of course, specified by both parties. We satisfy both requirements. And the other one is through the immigration services, where they capture your facial or biometric data and put it on their database for future usage, whether you're arriving or departing the country.
Excellent. Yeah, well, thank you for giving us more details about the way it is being put together and implemented in DXB. My last question now, before we look at we open up the Q&A session. So my last question, Hassa, you've mentioned previously slightly the Apple, the Googles, the EU digital identity wallets. So looking in the future in your crystal ball, how do you see these wallet trials impacting the airport's biometric solutions already implemented? Will those wallets simplify our lives as travelers, or will this complicate how solutions are implemented in the future? So what are your thoughts regarding these wallets?
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Sébastien. I think it won't complicate things. I truly believe it will simplify things. And the reason for that is it will be driven to some extent by the users. It will be you and I having a wallet. We already do. We pay through our wallet. It's now in the US, you have your driver's license, your passport. And so it's becoming a commodity, and I think that's really important. That will drive the development. It will drive the expansion, if you will. and it will lay the road for contactless travel. And obviously, I think we will see multiple solutions, but I think in a broad perspective, it will be based on digital identity wallets. The customer experience will be somewhat the same globally.
Yeah.
And it will be, so I think that's how things will work in the future. And I think it will simplify things. At airports, I think we'll just, whether we will have equipment that will facilitate that contactless travel as, let's say, stupid devices, non-intelligent, just being able to interact with a personal device, not having to look into a database or any other than just, make the transaction happen is one thing. Or as one supplier once, said to me not a long time ago, that we probably need very advanced equipment to, I don't know, but as such, we would, as seen from a customer experience point of view, it would be a simplified travel experience, I think. So, and just one last point from an airline perspective, talking about not so much about the airport, what happens outside the airport. I think what we're looking at and what we've tried, and both you and I, Jean-Sébastien, because we've been heavily involved in the planning of OneID and all of the principles and everything, is ready to fly. The airport readiness, trying to avoid problems before they happen at the airport, having a customer ready to fly, from home, using digital identity, and then avoiding APIS problems, like they have to transmit their passport data to the airline and manually done by a digital identity. We will get rid of those problems. We'll have a correct and we'll have a good data, if you're good quality of data, and then avoid problems at the airport. So that's why we keep focused on what we call airport readiness.
Let's be ready. No, exactly. Ready to fly and equipment ready to operate. Excellent. Thank you for these explanations and these ideas shared with us today. To all our speakers, I'm now we have some 10 minutes left, so I'd like to go through some of the questions that we have seen with in the chat. 1 second. The first question I see here is, can AI, the famous AI question here, can AI plus quantum computing facilitate airport passenger traffic flow and footfall? So anyone in any panelists would like to take that one here on AI and quantum computing technology?
I can have a quick stab at it, JS. So I mean, these are kind of new technologies that we haven't seen fully implemented into the aviation world yet. Let's say there's obviously some use cases being trialed. There's lots of interesting uses for it that are coming up, but from a passenger flow perspective, I think what Sami mentioned in terms of the trial that they're using in Dubai, like if AI or quantum computing is kind of linked with biometrics, it could be quite powerful if it's able to process information without a person standing. Okay, facial biometrics is becoming the typical biometric marker. If it can capture that at a distance, moving at speed, with other passengers around you, then that can actually help facilitate some of this. So as Sami said, it's working for immigration services in Dubai, but you could actually see biometrics in combination with some other technologies helping on the security screening front, perhaps, if a passenger's biometric credential and identification is part of that mix. In some parts of Europe, you're not actually checking the identity of the passenger, you're just checking approval to travel versus with a boarding card. So there's a couple of issues around, is a biometric needed for security screening and for boarding, etc. So, I mean, I think combining biometric capture with some of these technologies to process it, to give you assurance that who they say they are, at the right position in the journey. I think it's something that could happen, but I guess we haven't seen it fully realized yet.
Exactly, to be seen in the future. Excellent. Now, the next question I have for you, my speakers, is can the participant or can the speakers say whether government support needed to make a success of biometrics? So if it works in the US, in India, but can you see biometrics working without benefit of a government provided mandated database of photos? So how do you see this being worked in terms of government implication? Yes, Derwin.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think we have seen examples of that. So obviously, the United States and TVS for their U.S. exit program and entry program is one that's often talked about because of the massive database that is held by the Department of Homeland Security, whereas other jurisdictions don't have a government program like that. And I think Connor made a really good point that it really comes down to data privacy and security, and how that data is, transferred and kept and stored and deleted with proper consent. So in Canada, we have seen both models. We have seen the big government model that we're using to enter passengers into the United States. We also have an airline-led model where the digital ID is on the passenger's phone. It's only shared with express consent, and it's deleted shortly after. Now, there does require government approvals for that ID to be used for the process for processing passengers at an airport, but if done, correctly, and sticking to the standards such as GDPR, then that situation can also work. So I think there's space for both government databases, but also for industry-led solutions.
Any other thoughts by other speakers on this question?
That's the same model. It's used between Emirates Airline and the Immigration and Custom Control in Dubai, the government. And as I said, the Dubai Airports act as the gateway between those transfer of data between the two, under the strict consent of the passenger, whether we're using it from the Emirates Airline side. There must be a consent, and it can be deleted upon the request of the passenger, whether change his mind in a later, his or her mind in a later stage as well. So yes, both sides works very well in our model, at least.
Okay. Thank you for this. Maybe I'll turn it to Hasse or Connor. How much do travelers know about biometric travel, and are they ready to use it? Do you find it challenging to deal with this type of traveler in the future?
I'd say they're ready. And as you mentioned in the beginning, a vast number of our customers, passengers, they would like to use biometrics. They would like to share their biometrics in order to receive benefits in terms of contactless travel, but also confidence in the journey, that they will actually be able to to arrive at the destination without having to fear something's happening at the border crossing or something. So they're ready. Absolutely, they are. We don't have to ask for that, as long as we stay within the the giving consent and everything that that Derwin was just mentioning, which is really important. But yes, our customers, they want this.
Same thoughts, others, different thoughts or similar? Yeah, people want this, Connor?
Yeah, I think people want it, but there is some difference in different jurisdictions. For example, like some challenges. Let's say we're operating, in Saudi, which is very different, very different culture to Europe in Dublin. So factoring in for local considerations is important as well. So how do you actually implement something when passengers may have religious reasons for covering their face, or other challenges like this, other exceptions. But I think from a general perspective, most passengers, yes, are willing to use it. But how do we navigate some of those minor exceptions are going to be kind of worked through eventually. But I don't think that should limit us from, making things easier and more efficient, as I said, for the mass of travelers who are ready for it and are using biometrics on their phones for payments and other elements. We just need to move it into the airport space a bit more.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Connor. Thank you to all our speakers. We're almost there. We have to go on time performance as everywhere in aviation. So let me just conclude this webinar today to say it was a pleasure to moderate this webinar that looked at the importance of biometrics and digital identity management in airport environments. We hope that the insights and discussions were helpful and applicable in your airport environment. And again, as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, a future guide is in preparation. So please consult our ACI publications page in the future when we will be ready to release the guidebook on biometrics. So an airport biometric guide created by Airports for Airports. So thanks again for your time. Thank you to our speakers today. And I wish everyone a nice day and see you next time.